Courtney, that was bloody fantastic.
Thank you.
Let me tell you something, Courtney. Something has changed in you. Trust me. In the time you were on the show last year to now, your interaction with the audience, the confidence. I think this has been my favourite performance of you so far.
There are moments in television history that stop you cold. Moments where you forget you're watching a show, forget the cameras, forget the judges, forget everything, and you just feel something real. The night Courtney Hadwin walked onto the America's Got Talent stage was one of those moments. She was 13 years old, barely 5 feet tall, wearing an oversized vintage jacket, and she looked like she wanted to disappear into the floorboards. The audience didn't know what to expect. The judges didn't know what to expect. And if we're being completely honest, Courtney herself probably didn't know what was about to happen either. But then she opened her mouth. What came out of that small, nervous girl from a tiny mining village in County Durham, England, was nothing short of extraordinary. A voice ancient and raw, gritty and powerful, the kind of voice that makes the hairs on your arms stand up and your chest tighten with emotion. The audience erupted. Howie Mandel slammed the golden buzzer. And Simon Cowell, the man who has built an entire career on being unmoved, unimpressed, and unflinching, sat there stunned, visibly shaken, almost brought to tears by a 13-year-old girl who sang like she had lived 100 lives. That night felt like the beginning of something beautiful. It turned out to be something far more complicated. To understand what happened to Courtney Hadwin, you have to understand where she came from. Heselden is not a glamorous place. It's a small, quiet former mining village near Hartlepool in the northeast of England, the kind of place where people know their neighbors, where life moves slowly, and where dreams of international stardom feel very far away. Courtney was born on July 6, 2004, and she grew up there with her parents, Paul and Anne-Marie, and her younger siblings. It was an ordinary, grounded upbringing. And that ordinariness, that rootedness, would later become both her greatest strength and the thing the music industry had absolutely no idea what to do with. Music found Courtney early, the way it finds certain people, not as a hobby, but as a calling. She started singing at home as a small child, the way kids hum to themselves without thinking, but it quickly became clear this was something different. By the time she was 9 or 10, she was singing seriously. At 11, she performed at a school open mic event, covering Say Something by A Great Big World and Christina Aguilera, and a video of that performance went quietly viral in the local community. People who heard it couldn't believe what they were listening to. This wasn't a cute kid singing a song. This was something genuine and rare. Her family recognized it immediately. Her father took on extra work, including pizza delivery jobs, just to cover the cost of her singing lessons and the petrol money needed to drive her to auditions and open mic nights across the Northeast. Her mother championed her at every turn. They weren't a wealthy family chasing fame. They were a loving family supporting a daughter who had something remarkable inside her and deserved the chance to let it out. Courtney buskied in local spaces to help contribute. She trained at multiple local music academies. She entered regional competitions and kept placing well, kept turning heads, kept making people stop and stare and wonder where on earth this voice had come from. By 2016, at just 12 years old, she was winning Hartlepool's Performer of the Year award. She opened for Sister Sledge at the South Tyneside Festival in front of over 18,000 people. She appeared on The Voice Kids UK in 2017, where she delivered a fiery rendition of Tina Turner's Nutbush City Limits that earned her a spot on Danny Jones's team, and she went on to reach the finals of that competition. Each step forward confirmed what people close to her had always believed: Courtney Hadwin was not a novelty. She was the real thing. In early 2018, AGT producers came calling. They were searching for international talent, and somehow, word of this teenager from County Durham had reached them. Courtney auditioned for Season 13 of America's Got Talent, and what happened next became one of the most watched talent show moments in internet history. She walked out looking terrified. She gave short, shy answers to the judges' questions. She clutched the microphone like it was the only solid thing in the room. And then she launched into Otis Redding's Hard to Handle, and the transformation was instantaneous and breathtaking. Gone was the nervous schoolgirl. In her place stood someone entirely different, a performer of extraordinary presence, raw power, and wild, untamed energy. The audience was on its feet within seconds. The judges' jaws dropped. And Simon Cowell, famously, almost lost his composure entirely. He later described her as going from this shy little thing to something like a lion the moment she began to sing. It was one of the rare moments where Simon's carefully maintained armor visibly cracked. He was moved. Genuinely moved. And for millions of viewers watching at home, that reaction said everything. If Simon Cowell is moved, something extraordinary has just happened. Howie Mandel hit the golden buzzer, sending confetti raining down and Courtney through to the live shows. By the time that audition video circulated online, it had been viewed over 300 million times. 300 million times. For a 13-year-old girl from a former mining village in County Durham, that number is almost incomprehensible. She went on to perform brilliantly throughout the competition, advancing through the quarterfinals and semifinals with increasingly powerful performances, building a global fanbase seemingly overnight. She finished 6th overall, which surprised many who had expected her to go much further. But regardless of placement, the world now knew Courtney Hadwin's name. Shortly after the 2018 season ended, Simon Cowell signed Courtney to Psycho Music in partnership with Arista Records. She was 14 years old. In interviews at the time, she described it as a dream come true. She talked about being excited to record original music, to stay true to herself, to finally have the platform to share the songs she wanted to share. She sounded hopeful and bright and full of excitement for what was coming. And who could blame her? She was a teenager who had worked incredibly hard, come from very little, and was now being offered what seemed like everything. A major label. A powerful partner in Simon Cowell. International reach. It sounded like the beginning of the story, not the beginning of the problem. But the music industry is not built for 14-year-olds. It is barely built for adults. And what Courtney stepped into was a machine, relentless, commercial, and almost entirely indifferent to the emotional reality of the young person it was processing. Almost immediately, she found herself in back-to-back recording sessions with producers and songwriting teams she hadn't chosen, being steered toward a polished pop-soul sound that had been decided for her rather than by her. She described the experience of having people around her constantly telling her what she should sound like and who she should be. She described writing sessions where she was expected to bend to themes and sounds she didn't connect with. She described feeling like a character being directed rather than an artist being developed. She was traveling between the UK and the United States constantly. She was expected to be media-ready at all times. She was 14 years old and living inside a schedule built for a seasoned professional. The weight of it was enormous. What happened next didn't happen loudly. There was no public breakdown, no dramatic headline-grabbing moment. What happened was quieter and in many ways sadder than that. Courtney simply began to withdraw. Social media posts grew less frequent. Public appearances became rarer. The constant flow of updates and promotional content that fans had come to expect began to slow, and then to stop. People noticed. Fans worried. Speculation began to circulate. Was she ill? Had something gone wrong behind the scenes? Was there a falling out? The silence was deafening precisely because the noise had once been so loud. This was a girl whose audition had been watched 300 million times, and now she had seemingly disappeared. The truth was both simpler and more painful than the rumors. Courtney was exhausted. She was a teenager who had been placed inside an industrial machine without adequate protection or nurturing, and she had reached a point where she needed to stop, step back, and remember who she actually was beneath all of the expectation and pressure. She later spoke about feeling the burnout deeply, about the loss of creative control, about grappling with her own identity under the crushing weight of other people's visions for her career. And Simon Cowell? He moved on. The next season of AGT arrived, the next batch of auditions, the next wave of talent. The business continued as businesses do. There was no public acknowledgement of what Courtney was going through, no visible effort to check in or course correct. He had spotted the talent, signed the talent, and the machinery had taken over from there. In the world Cowell operates in, that is simply how things work. But Courtney Hadwin is not a person who stays down. What she did next is arguably the most impressive chapter of her story. More impressive, even, than the viral audition that started everything. She rebuilt. Quietly, carefully, and entirely on her own terms. Working with Grammy-winning producer Kevin Bowe, known for his collaborations with legends like Etta James and Joe Cocker, Courtney began writing and recording music that felt genuinely true to who she is. Songs like Monsters, You Only Love Me When I Lie, Breakable, and That Girl Don't Live Here. Music that didn't chase radio formulas or label expectations, but instead explored real emotional territory. Vulnerability, resilience, anger, identity, and the complicated aftermath of being pushed to perform before you were ready. The response was remarkable. Critics who had always admired her voice now admired her artistry. Her single, You Only Love Me When I Lie, was described as a blues soul anthem of emotional honesty and raw courage. A stripped-down, mic-less video performance of the song left viewers genuinely breathless. She was called thunderous. She was called fearless. She was called, finally, herself. In April 2024, she performed at Carnegie Hall, personally selected by legendary music executive Clive Davis to open a gala with a Janis Joplin tribute, the same artist she had been compared to at 13 years old on that AGT stage. Only this time, she wasn't being compared to anyone. She was standing on her own. There have been stories circulating online, viral clips, emotional retrospectives, suggesting that Simon Cowell has privately reflected on Courtney's journey with something approaching regret. That he has, in quiet moments, acknowledged that the system failed her. That perhaps too much was expected too soon from a girl who deserved more patience, more protection, and more genuine mentorship than she received. Whether those specific accounts are verifiable or not, the question they raise is one worth sitting with. Because the pattern is not unique to Courtney. The entertainment industry has a long and well-documented history of taking extraordinary young talent, placing it inside machinery built for adults, extracting what it can, and moving on when things get complicated. It is a pattern that has broken many people. The fact that Courtney was not broken, that she found her way through the noise and came out the other side more grounded, more authentic, and more artistically realized than she went in, says something profound about her character. She is 20 years old now. She lives back in the UK, close to County Durham, close to the roots that kept her sane when everything else was spinning. She writes her music at home. She stays connected with her fans in honest, unglamorous ways. She talks openly about mental health, about boundaries, about the importance of protecting your creative voice even when the world is telling you to compromise it. Courtney Hadwin's story is not a tragedy. It came close to being one, and that is worth acknowledging. But it is ultimately a story about a girl who had something real inside her, who was almost consumed by a system that didn't know how to honor it, and who fought her way back to herself with patience and courage and an absolute refusal to let go of the music that had always been hers.